A call to 911 would reveal a horror so unthinkable that even the most seasoned investigators were left shaken. One officer would later call it the worst crime scene he'd ever encountered. But for the man standing on the porch waiting for the police, Gregory Green, this wasn't his first time confessing to murder. It was, horrifyingly, his second. This is the terrifying true story of a man given a second chance, who used it to destroy yet another family. Gregory Green was once seen as a typical man, quiet, religious, a churchgoer, a husband, soon to be a father. But on one summer night in 1991, that image was shattered forever. In a violent rage, Green stabbed his pregnant wife, Tanya Green, repeatedly, in the face and chest, until both she and their unborn child were dead. And then, in an eerily calm fashion, he called 911. When police arrived at the scene, Gregory did not attempt to flee. He waited, confessed, and surrendered. In 1992, he pleaded no contest to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 15 to 25 years in prison. It seemed like justice had been served. Prison records indicate that he showed no remorse or empathy for the murders, instead shifting blame on Tanya for his actions. Behind bars, Gregory Green appeared to change. He became a model prisoner. He kept a virtually spotless prison record, with only one minor altercation with another inmate. He was given a ticket for getting involved in a fistfight over a television. He steered clear of prison violence, engaged in educational programs, and kept a low profile. His prison behavior was so exemplary that it caught the attention of friends, family, and even corrections officers who began to believe that Green had genuinely reformed. The question looming over the parole board was simple, yet profound. Did he feel remorse? He was denied parole 4 times. But on the 5th attempt in 2008, the answer seemed to be yes. Letters poured in. His parents, friends, and notably Pastor Fred Harris, a man who knew Gregory before the murders and had remained in contact throughout his incarceration. Pastor Harris vouched for Gregory's character and promised that his church would support Gregory's reintegration into society. He was one of Gregory's strongest advocates. What no one knew then was that Harris's daughter, Faith, would one day marry this killer, with horrific consequences. One letter read, "We believe Gregory is very sorry for what he did and has gained insight into his behaviors." Another, from Pastor Harris himself, stated, "Gregory and I were friends before his mishap, and he was incarcerated. He was a member of our church. I feel he has paid for his unfortunate lack of self-control and the damage he has caused as much as possible and is sorry." And with those words, the parole board granted his release. Gregory Green walked out of prison a free man in 2008. After his release, Green stayed connected to Pastor Harris and his church. 2 years later, in 2010, he married Faith Harris, the pastor's daughter. Faith had 2 children from a previous marriage, Chadney Allen Jr. and Kara Allen. Together with Gregory, she later welcomed 2 more daughters, Coy and Kaylee Green. At first, it seemed like a story of redemption. Faith believed in second chances. The family appeared happy, but behind closed doors, darkness was festering. On the surface, Green seemed reformed, a working man, a father. But cracks appeared early. Faith filed for divorce in 2013, citing a breakdown in the marriage. Faith had begun to fear for her safety. She filed for a personal protection order, describing Gregory's increasingly aggressive and threatening behavior. In her statement, she mentioned him getting belligerent, kicking things, and even threatening her safety. "Things are going to get ugly if you don't leave the house," she claimed he told her. She described an incident where Gregory kicked the couch while one of their babies was sleeping on it. Yet the court denied her PPO request, citing, insufficient allegations. Despite her attempts to leave, Faith remained in the marriage for another 3 years. But in August 2016, she filed for divorce again, and this time, the consequences would be fatal. A month later, on the night of September 21st, Gregory Green snapped and committed one of the most brutal family annihilations in Michigan history. What he did next is almost beyond comprehension. That night, Gregory tied Faith up in the basement of their home using zip ties and duct tape. He slashed her face with a knife and shot her in the foot, rendering her helpless. Then he brought her teenage children, Chadney, 19, and Kara, 17, downstairs. He forced Faith to watch as he executed them both. 1 bullet each to the head. No words, no mercy. Then, in a move so cold, Green went to his 2 youngest daughters, Coy, 5, and Cole, 4, as they slept. He placed them in the family car, snaked a hose from the exhaust pipe into the window, and filled the vehicle with deadly carbon monoxide. Once they were gone, he carried their lifeless bodies back inside and tucked them into their beds, as if they were simply sleeping. At 1:15 a.m. on September 22nd, Green called 911. When police arrived at the home on the 4400 block of Hip Street in Dearborn Heights, they found Gregory Green calmly waiting on the porch. He was immediately arrested. Inside, officers discovered the unimaginable. In the basement, Faith Green lay bound, bleeding, barely alive and traumatized. Her teenage children were dead at her feet. Upstairs, the little girls lay in their beds, lifeless, their tiny faces peaceful. There were no signs of struggle. They never had a chance. Veteran officers described it as the worst crime scene they had ever seen. Gregory Green had done it again, and once again, he had called the police on himself. In February 2017, Gregory Green pleaded guilty to 4 counts of second-degree murder, as well as torture and assault charges for his attack on Faith. He was sentenced to 45 to 100 years in prison, with an additional 6 to 10 years for the other charges. He won't be eligible for parole until he's 97. Faith Green stood in court and faced the man who had murdered her entire family. Sometimes I dream of the night all this happened and wake up screaming and sweating, thinking that I can save my children somehow, she said through tears. Then I realized that the nightmare is actually reality and that my children are really gone. She described the migraines, the trauma, the fear that gripped her even as she stood in that courtroom. "You're a con artist. You're a monster," she declared. "You're a devil in disguise. You are now forever exposed." She told him that while he meant to break her, he had failed. "What you did not work. While I stand up here trembling with fear, I put on my bravest face to be in the same room with the man who murdered all 4 of my children, 2 of them violently in front of me with a gun. He killed my other 2 babies." And finally she said, "There's no punishment that fits the crime. Not even torture and death would do justice. Your justice will come when you burn in hell for all eternity." Gregory Green responded, "First of all, it's in God's hands. Only He can judge. You know, I do regret and I'm sorry for what has happened." A joint funeral was held for all 4 children. At the service, Faith gave the pastor a short note to read. "My dear babies, I loved you all. The Gregory Green case is not just a story of murder. It's a story of missed warnings, of a system that believed in rehabilitation but overlooked the danger, of a man who killed, was forgiven, and then killed again. The case exposed glaring flaws in parole evaluations. Despite his history of blaming his first victim and showing no genuine remorse, he was released after completing prison programs and receiving glowing recommendations, including from the father of his future second victim. Even more chilling, Had he not been paroled in 2008, he would have been automatically released in 2012 due to good behavior credits. And most of all, it's a story of a mother who lost everything, yet still stood tall in the face of evil. Faith, now a survivor and advocate, lives with unimaginable grief. Her children, bright, beloved, full of promise, were erased by a man who should never have walked free. And Gregory Green, he sits in prison. His legacy one of calculated evil, his crimes a warning about the dangers of misplaced mercy. To this day, no one knows why Green did it. Was it the divorce? A need for control? Or was the monster always there, hiding behind a mask of redemption? The only certainty is this: 4 children are dead because a killer was given a second chance. And this time, there will be no parole. Never again, we say, but stories like this make us wonder how many monsters are simply waiting for a second chance. This story teaches us about the dangers of overlooking red flags and the importance of protecting those who are most vulnerable. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.